At their lavish anniversary celebration, with all eyes on them, my parents handed my sister a small velvet box. Inside was a house key, tied with a golden ribbon, her dream home, fully paid for. Applause filled the room as she cried tears of joy. Then they turned to me with polite smiles, handed me a plain envelope containing a $25 gift card, and said, "Hope this helps with groceries." In that moment, surrounded by cheers and champagne, I realized exactly where I stood in this family. Kala here. They tried to bury me. My own family. They carved me out of their story, out of my own home, with a smile. But they forgot one crucial thing: you can't bury what's already a wildfire. The rain had been a relentless drumbeat on my windshield, all the way from Virginia, like it knew exactly what kind of day I was driving into. By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway in Pennsylvania, it was just past 3, the light already fading, headlights barely cutting through the thick gray mist. 6 hours, shoulder to shoulder with that steering wheel, and my hands were still clammy. I just stood there for a second, feeling the quiet hum of Lily's spotless white SUV already parked outside. She'd probably just flown in, skirted the storm entirely, pristine as usual. I sighed, grabbed my overnight bag, and the small gift I'd spent weeks on, a photo album, crammed with our childhood memories. I knocked twice, then pushed the door open, just like always. But this time? It didn't feel like coming home. It felt polite. "Oh, Kala, you made it," my mother said, looking up from the kitchen island, her voice too bright, too chipper. Lily was already there, perched on a bar stool, laughing at something my dad had said. She barely turned, just waved a hand, her diamond engagement ring winking. "You look tired." "Long drive," I managed, dropping my bag by the stairs. "Hi, Dad." He just nodded, didn't even stand up. "Should have come last night. We had cocktails." I forced a smile. Traffic through Delaware had added almost 2 hours. Lily slid off her stool, heels clicking, and gave me a quick, formal hug, barely touching. Her fiancé, Ryan, gave me a firm handshake, like I was some random contact from a networking event he couldn't quite place. That's when I saw it. A gold ribbon box, sitting in the center of the island. Perfectly wrapped, clearly from some fancy boutique. Lily kept glancing at it, her eyes glittering. "You didn't have to bring anything," Mom said, her gaze landing on my gift. "But thank you." She took it, setting it down next to a stack of paper towels, like it was just another grocery item. I bit the inside of my cheek. Dinner was around 6. Lily was in a floral dress, all sunshine and smiles. I was still in my travel jeans and sweater. Mom made pot roast, Lily's favorite, of course. Dad poured wine for everyone. Everyone but me. "Still on that health kick?" he chuckled, handing me sparkling water. "Sure," I said. The conversation flowed easily between them. Ryan talked about his job at the firm, and they all leaned in, mesmerized. My mom kept brushing invisible crumbs off Lily's sleeve. It was like watching a perfectly curated dinner party, and I was the unexpected plus one, just there to fill a chair. After dessert, Dad cleared his throat, standing up, a wide smile on his face. "Lily," he said, "your mother and I wanted to give you something special." He lifted the gold ribbon box, handing it to her. She gasped, a genuine, delighted gasp, untying the ribbon with the practiced ease of someone who only ever opened presents meant just for her. Inside was a small white box. She opened it. "A key? A key?" she laughed. "To what?" "Our house. The one on Riverbend," Dad said, beaming. Her hand flew to her chest. "The house we grew up in." Dad nodded. "It's yours now. You've earned it. You've always been the responsible one." Lily teared up. My mom beamed. Ryan clapped her on the back like she'd just won the lottery. They didn't notice I wasn't clapping. Then Mom turned to me. "And for you, Kala." She handed me a plain white envelope. No ribbon. Just my name, faintly inked. Inside was a printed job listing. Administrative assistant, entry level. Salary, $38,000. Location, Harrisburg. I just stared at it. Dad chuckled. We figured this suits you better. Something manageable. Closer to your pace. I swallowed, but there was nothing there. Lily was still smiling. Ryan sipped his wine. The key in Lily's hand had an address engraved on it, 542 Riverbend Lane. Our old house. My childhood bedroom. The swing Dad built in the backyard. The lilac tree I planted with Mom when I was 9. All of it. Hers. I looked down at the paper in my hand, then back at the table. Thank you, I said quietly. Lily beamed. Isn't it great? I'm thinking we'll remodel the kitchen. Knock out that wall near the den. I smiled. The kind of smile you wear at a funeral when you're fighting not to break down. Sounds perfect. I excused myself, walking towards the guest bathroom. The hallway lights flickered overhead. And that's when I saw them. Stacked near the laundry room. 3 moving boxes, labeled in thick black marker. Kala's room, books, Kala's closet, Kala miscellaneous. They'd already packed up my childhood. The bathroom was cold. I locked the door, leaned against the sink, and pulled out my phone. I wasn't even sure why. Instinct, maybe? And there it was. An email from my bank, dated 3 weeks ago. A mortgage transfer confirmation. The house had changed ownership. And I was listed as co-signer. Except I hadn't signed anything. I stared at the screen, my fingers numb. I scrolled through the PDF attachment. The signature, my name, was perfect. Too perfect. But I hadn't written it. I hadn't even known they were selling the house. My father forged it. A slow, steady roar filled my ears. Rage. Quiet, buried, rising. I splashed cold water on my face, dried it, and walked back out. Everyone was still laughing about something Ryan had said. I didn't ask. I grabbed my bag, said I had an early meeting the next day. No one stopped me. As I reached for the front door, I heard my mother's voice. Not whispering this time, just loud enough to carry. She should be grateful anyone still thinks of her. Outside, the rain had eased into a fine mist. The sky was turning that deep, dark blue that makes streetlights glow early. I looked down. The gold ribbon from Lily's box had fallen onto the porch, damp and curling at the edge. I bent down, picked it up, slid it into my coat pocket. Not because it was pretty. Not because I needed it. But because it reminded me what they valued, and what they thought I was worth. I looked at the ribbon in my hand and smiled, not because I was happy, but because I finally understood exactly what kind of gift they'd given me. I dropped the ribbon into the ceramic dish by the door and finally exhaled. That kind of breath that sits low in your chest. The kind that only escapes when something in you breaks loose. Not violently, just quietly, like a string snapping in the dark. My apartment was still. Not the cozy kind of still, but the kind that feels like nobody had waited up for you. The kind that reminded you this was a space I returned to, not a place anyone expected me to walk into. I hadn't changed clothes. My dress still smelled faintly of old perfume and rainwater. My damp coat was slumped on the chair where I'd tossed it last night. The job listing sat on my coffee table, mockingly crisp and dry, as if it hadn't survived the same dinner I did. My fingers hovered over it. Not yet. Instead, I walked into the kitchenette, clicked the old coffee maker on, and stared blankly as it sputtered to life. The aroma usually comforted me, but that morning, it felt like a smell borrowed from someone else's life. The steam curled upward while the words from last night played back in perfect clarity. This suits you better. Something manageable. Manageable. I leaned my elbows on the counter and whispered to myself. I wasn't invited to celebrate. I was summoned to witness. It didn't feel like humiliation anymore. Not exactly. The sting was still there, yes. But beneath it, something sharper had started to form. A shape. A clarity. The mug warmed my palms as I sat down, pulling my knees up beneath me on the couch. A draft slipped in through the old window frame. I sipped and stared across the room where stacks of mail leaned slightly to the left. My own handwriting scribbled across the envelopes. Sharp, decisive strokes. I thought about the mortgage confirmation I'd seen, the one with my name, or someone pretending to be me. The signature had been too neat, too patient. It had none of the rush or rhythm my pen left behind. I stood slowly, reached for my journal on the bookshelf, and opened to a blank page. My pen hovered for a long moment before anything came out. Age 10, they missed my science fair. Lily had ballet. Age 14, Mom told me not to wear that blue dress again. Said it made Lily look washed out in pictures. Age 18, they skipped my birthday dinner. SAT prep for Lily. Age 22, my graduation photo was never framed. I paused. I had walked across a stage with honors. My father shook my hand that day with a nod, like I was some intern who delivered decent work. But Lily? Her kindergarten recital photo still hung in the hallway, in a gilded frame next to her high school prom crown. That wasn't memory. That was pattern. I dropped the pen, suddenly too tired to write. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. The sound of my phone vibrating broke the silence. I reached for it without thinking. Thumbed open the screen. Lily. A picture. Her new kitchen. Marble countertops. A caption in bubbly font, still surreal. Can't wait for you to see it done. No apology. No. Hey, sorry about the weird dinner. No acknowledgement of the key or the envelope or anything. Just a digital slap on the back. I started to type a reply. Enjoy it. You always get what you want. But my thumb hovered over the blue send arrow and then moved up to delete, line by line. I stared at the blank message field for a beat, then backed out entirely. Instead, I opened an old folder I hadn't touched in months. Estate transfer, Grandpa's property. I'd made it when our grandfather passed years ago. My name was there next to Lily's on the original deed transfer. Grandpa had left it to both of us. I remembered that day. We both signed at the same kitchen table. Lily twirling a pen like it was a chore, and me reading every clause twice. I clicked through PDFs until I found the file labeled Initial Deed. Co-signers. There it was, black and white. This wasn't an oversight. This was surgical. I shut the laptop and sat still for a while. The refrigerator hummed softly behind me. Outside, someone scraped ice off a windshield, the sound distant and oddly comforting. Life didn't pause just because yours cracked open. I stood, walked to my little desk by the window, and printed out the mortgage document, the forged one, the signature pretending to be mine. I circled it in red ink, one clean, confident circle. Then I taped it next to the front door, right next to where the ribbons sat in the ceramic dish. On top of the page, I scrawled a single sentence, know where you were erased, and start there. I stepped back, looked at it for a long moment. The only thing more dangerous than a daughter they thought was weak is one who stops needing their permission to exist. The morning sunlight barely reached through the blinds, but I was already dressed. My hair pinned back, shoes by the door. I hadn't slept much. There was a tremor just beneath my ribs. Not fear, but something colder. Focus. I folded the forged mortgage copy into my bag, grabbed my notepad, and locked up behind me. The Allegheny County Recorder's office was just past downtown, sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a pawn shop. It was the kind of place you never visited unless something had gone terribly wrong, or someone had made sure you wouldn't know until it was too late. The clerk behind the plexiglass had a name tag that read, Martha. Her glasses hung low on her nose as she looked me up and down. Hi, I said, my voice steady, polite. I'm trying to find records on a property. It used to be under my name. I believe there's been a fraudulent transfer. She didn't flinch. I guess she'd heard worse. Address? I gave it. She typed without looking at me. You got ID? I slid my driver's license under the glass. She scanned it, then tapped her keyboard again. Give me a second. While she printed something, I felt my hands getting warm with tension. My pulse strummed behind my ears. She returned with a few pages clipped together. This what you're looking for? I took it. The deed stared back at me. The original one. Co-signed by Grandpa, myself, and Lily after he passed. But the next page was newer, much newer. A title transfer. Dated 3 months ago. Buyer, Lily Bishop. Seller, Ronald Bishop. Price, $1. My name was nowhere. But my forged signature, shaky, barely mimicking my handwriting, lingered at the bottom of the previous revision, like a stain no one had bothered to clean. In the contact field, an email, rbishop63@aol.com. I stared at it. Not even an effort to hide it. A lump sat in my throat, but I didn't let it rise. Can I get a certified copy? I asked quietly. Martha nodded. That'll be $6. I paid in cash, thanked her, and walked out into the chilly mid-morning air. I didn't cry. Not there. Not yet. On the bus ride back, I sat by the window and watched the city slide past. Great buildings, damp sidewalks, people rushing through routines that didn't know me, didn't hurt me. My fingers tightened around the document. Grandpa used to drive us out every summer to that lot, back when the ground was nothing but soft clay and oak roots. He let me pick the tile for the kitchen. Green, blue, the color of the creek that ran behind the woods. Lily was away at camp that summer. She didn't care about tile. That kitchen's got your name on it, he said once, brushing dust off my shoulder. One day this place will be yours to breathe in. And now? Now it was someone else's Instagram backdrop, a showcase for the daughter who never lifted a hammer. I closed my eyes and felt the ache in my chest spread like a slow bruise. Not from the loss of property, but of belonging. It wasn't just a house. It was proof I had mattered once, and now even that had been scrubbed away, like I was never supposed to exist in the story. By the time I got home, a fine drizzle had started. I shook out my coat and placed the certified deed copy on my kitchen table, right next to the job ad my father had handed me at dinner. The one with highlighter all over it. Entry level. It read. No experience needed. No degree required. I sat down. No degree required. They really meant that. For Lily, a $600,000 house with a walk-in pantry and a backyard fire pit. For me, a job flipping sandwiches. I picked up a pen and drew a line from the glowing yellow highlight to my name, barely legible, forged on the title transfer. 2 artifacts. 1 truth. That's when the smile came. Not wide. Not joyous. Just a small, knowing pull at the corners of my mouth. This wasn't over. I stood, crossed to the closet, and pulled out a dusty gray file box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were tax records, bank letters, and Grandpa's old files. Wills. Property outlines. Trust documents I used to help him organize before he got sick. I carried it to the table. My hands moved slowly, but with precision. There was no shaking now, just quiet. I spent the next few hours scanning every single page into a secure folder I named. They forgot I could read contracts. The sun had set by the time I finished. My back ached. My eyes stung. But the fire inside me had settled into something solid. At the bottom of the file box, beneath the older papers, I found a folded envelope labeled in Grandpa's handwriting. Transfer terms. Lily and Kala. Notarized copy. I didn't open it. Not yet. Some things needed the right time. For now, I taped the certified copy of the fraudulent transfer to the wall beside my fridge. Tomorrow, I'd start building my timeline. Not to fight them. Not yet. Just to understand every corner of what had been taken. Because the moment I stopped expecting fairness was the moment I started building leverage. I hadn't even taken off my shoes when I saw the missed calls. 3 of them. Same unknown number. No voicemail transcription. Just a little red dot blinking next to the call log. I tossed my keys into the bowl by the door and let my bag slide off my shoulder. The ache from my double shift at the diner still clinging to my legs. I stared at the screen a moment longer before pressing play. There was a pause. Then a woman's voice came through. Sharp. Low. Urgent. He said you'd never find out, but you should check the second drawer in your father's study before it's too late. Click. That was it. I stood still in the middle of my apartment, heart pounding. The voice wasn't familiar. Not a relative, not a neighbor. But there was something in the way she said it, like it hurt her to speak. I replayed the message again and again. He said you'd never find out, before it's too late. I didn't know what I hated more, that someone knew something and hadn't told me until now, or that they assumed I'd never have the guts to dig. I sat down slowly at the kitchen table, trying to piece together what the second drawer might mean. Then it hit me. Dad's study? The desk with the brass handles, the one only he used. For a moment, I felt like a teenager again, shut out of grown-up conversations, listening from behind closed doors. That old ache of invisibility, it was starting to fade, replaced by something harder, sharper. I picked up the phone and called Janine, my old babysitter. She used to help clean the house back before Mom pretended we were too professional for help. She picked up after 2 rings. Janine, it's Kala. Oh, sweetheart, she said, surprised. It's been a long time. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. There was a pause, then, gently. I'll try. Do you remember ever seeing my dad? Forge anything? My name? The silence stretched. I heard her exhale like she'd been holding her breath for years. One time, she said finally. He was sitting at that desk, your grandfather's desk. Muttering to himself, said, "She'll thank me later." She always does. He was holding an envelope. Your name was on it. My skin prickled. What was in it? I never saw, she whispered, but I remember thinking it wasn't right. The way he kept rewriting whatever was inside. I felt something twist in my stomach. Not pain. Something closer to fury, with a leash on it. Thank you, Janine, I said, my voice quieter than I meant. That night I didn't sleep. I waited. I knew my parents would be out at some dinner. Mom posted their every meal online like she was reviewing Michelin stars from the suburbs. I waited until the timestamp on her latest steak tartare was live. Then I grabbed my coat. The garden planter on the side of the house hadn't moved in years. I knelt beside it, fingers numb from the cold, and pulled out the spare key. Same one I used back in high school when I'd forget mine at swim practice. The door creaked, just barely. As I slipped inside, everything smelled the same. Wood polish and lemon-scented dusting spray. Familiar, but not comforting. I moved straight down the hall. The study door was ajar. The brass desk gleamed in the faint light from the hallway. I pulled the second drawer. At first, just old tax files and manila folders. Then, under a folder labeled discretionary, I found it. An envelope marked Trust Reassignment, Kala to Lily. Dated months before the anniversary dinner. Notarized. Filed. Deliberate. I held it in my hands like it might burn through my skin. They'd planned everything. The job ad. The public humiliation. The exclusion from the family photo. This wasn't impulsive. It was a strategy. They didn't just want me out. They wanted to make it look like I was never meant to be there at all. I could feel my throat tighten, but I didn't cry. Then I noticed something tucked behind the envelope. A folded sheet of notebook paper. Not typed. Handwritten. The handwriting was shaky, but I knew it. If you're reading this, it means they'd buried what's yours. Follow the coordinates. Below the line was a string of numbers scribbled like an afterthought. I stared at them, heart racing. It was his handwriting. Grandpa's. And in that moment I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in weeks. Hope. He knew. Somehow, he saw it coming, and he left me a trail. I tucked the envelope and the note inside my coat and pushed the drawer shut, careful to leave everything as it was. I backed out of the room, turned the key behind me, and slid the planter back into place. By the time I stepped onto the sidewalk, the wind had picked up. It cut across my cheeks, but I didn't shiver. I was too warm. I thought the worst part was the betrayal, but I hadn't even begun to peel back the lies. I didn't sleep much after I found the file in the study. The words on the envelope kept echoing in my head like a whisper through a locked door. Trust reassignment. Call to Lily. They had made the switch long before the family dinner. Long before they offered me that job posting like a cheap consolation prize. By Saturday morning my decision was made. I booked a rental car and packed only what I needed. A change of clothes, my phone, a flashlight, and the sealed note with those handwritten coordinates. The GPS led me north, past the outskirts of town, beyond where streetlights stretched, down winding backroads where cell service flickered in and out. I hadn't been this far out in years. But when I turned down that gravel path and saw the cabin again, it came rushing back. I must have been 8, maybe 9 the last time I was here. I remembered the way Grandpa would hold my hand just a little tighter as we approached the lake. He used to tell me this was his thinking place. No phones, no noise, just trees, water, and truth. The cabin had aged like an old photograph. Edges curling, colors faded. The wooden porch groaned beneath my steps. The key still sat behind the top plank, just where I'd seen him hide it once when I was little. I unlocked the door and stepped into stillness. Dust motes danced in the sunlight, cutting through slats in the boarded windows. A faded quilt still lay over the couch. There was a coffee mug with a crack down the side, still perched in the sink like it had been left yesterday. The silence was heavy, like the air knew I wasn't just visiting. I started with the floorboards near the fireplace. Something about that spot tugged at my memory. After a few careful pries with a fireplace poker, one board came loose. And there it was. A black folder, thick, bound shut with an old wax seal. And beside it, a dusty cassette recorder. My chest tightened. My fingers hesitated on the play button. Then I heard his voice. Kala, if you're hearing this, it means the worst has happened. It was him. My grandfather. His voice was slower than I remembered, raspier, but full of intent. They erased you to secure the house and the future inheritance for Lily. I never agreed to that. Never. I left you something only you can claim. It's not just about the house. It's about everything they stole from you. Starting when you were a child. I stood frozen, barely breathing. He continued. There's a trust one created. It was meant for you, but the clause was tricky. Your father made sure of that. To claim it, you have to present yourself with identification before your 30th birthday. And if you're hearing this, Kala, you have 23 days left. I stared down at my hands like they'd turned to stone. 23 days. The same trust they buried. The same one my name had been wiped from. The tape clicked off, leaving the room painfully quiet. I sat there for a long while. Maybe minutes, maybe longer. I could hear the creak of the cabin walls, the rustle of leaves outside. And in that quiet, old memories came crawling back. The kind I'd boxed up and pushed down deep. The time my father told me, "You're not like Lily. You ask too many questions." The school project Lily won an award for, one I had researched, drawn, and written from start to finish. The look on Mom's face every time I challenged something Lily said. Her smile would freeze and she'd whisper, "Don't start something. Just let her have it." How many times had I swallowed things just to keep the peace? And what did that peace cost me? I opened the file next. Inside was a notarized letter from Grandpa's legal advisor confirming the existence and terms of the trust. The signature was dated nearly 10 years ago. Underneath it, I found copies of letters between Grandpa and the estate lawyer. Pages yellowed but still clear. And one handwritten note slipped between them. The lawyer moved to Arizona. If you want to fight, you'll need him. My next move suddenly felt real. Tangible. I was going to find him. They had counted on me being passive, being quiet, being too late. But now, for the first time in years, I wasn't behind. I wasn't guessing. I stood up slowly, tucking the documents into my bag. Before I stepped out, I took one last look around the cabin. My eyes landed on a photo frame turned backward on the dusty bookshelf. I flipped it over. It was me, 8 years old, laughing by the lakeside, mud on my knees. Grandpa's arms slung around my shoulders. I smiled, small and tired, and whispered, "I'm still here, Grandpa." Then I locked the door behind me. As I walked back to the car, wind whipped through the trees. It was colder than I remembered up here. But inside I felt a heat building. They buried my name. But they forgot something. My name still breathes where they can't reach. I boarded the early flight to Arizona with nothing but a worn carry-on and the file tucked close to my chest like armor. I hadn't slept much the night before. My mind kept circling back to my grandfather's voice, crackling through that old cassette recorder, and the weight of the phrase, "Only you can claim this." That sentence had lodged itself deep in my chest. By the time I landed in Sedona, the sun had begun stretching itself across the red rock cliffs like a warm shawl. The contrast between the wide desert openness and the narrow silence I'd lived in lately almost made me dizzy. I picked up the rental, a beige sedan that smelled faintly of lemon wipes and stress, and drove toward the motel I'd booked. Simple 2 stories, no frills, just a place to breathe. The law office listed in the file wasn't hard to find. It sat on the corner of an older street, sandwiched between a hardware store and a florist. The brick exterior had faded into a burnt orange over time, and the rusted nameplate above the door read, "Raymond G. Eldridge, Esq." The door creaked slightly as I stepped inside, and I half expected dust to swirl up like in an old movie. An older man looked up from behind a battered oak desk. His glasses slid down his nose, and he squinted at me before his expression shifted, recognition blooming slow and warm. "Well," he said, standing carefully. "Kala. I thought I'd never see you again." There was no pretense in his tone, just a sort of quiet surprise, like he'd been waiting without knowing it. "You look just like your grandfather did when he was mad about something. Same fire behind the eyes." I smiled despite myself. He always said I was stubborn. Raymond motioned for me to sit, and I did, folding my hands together to still their shaking. He pulled open a drawer and took out a sealed envelope. The handwriting on the front was unmistakably Grandpa's. The ink had faded, but the intention was still loud. "Only if she comes." "I've had that in my desk for 7 years, Raymond said. "He updated his estate plan the same summer Lily started getting real close with your mother. Told me he had a feeling. A bad one. Said if things ever went south, this letter would explain what he couldn't finish saying in person." He handed it over gently like it was something sacred. My fingers trembled as I opened the seal. Inside was an official amendment, signed, notarized, and clearly stamped. My name was listed as the sole heir, not only to the house everyone had fought over, but also a second property near Aspen. I blinked at the page. I'd never even heard of a second property. Raymond leaned back. "That house in Aspen, it was bought in your name when you were 16 under a guardianship clause. It only activates if you're legally proven to have been defrauded or estranged by your immediate family." My stomach sank and tightened at once. "And given what they did," he nodded, "there's a case here. But we'll need evidence. One credible testimony about your exclusion and a certified handwriting expert to examine the forged sale documents they used." The air felt heavy around me, like the truth carried its own atmosphere. I tucked the documents back into the envelope and slipped it into my bag. For the first time in weeks, I felt the fog around me thin. We walked a short distance to a diner nearby, the kind of place where the coffee tastes like burnt hope and the waitress already knows your order by the second visit. Raymond ordered black coffee. I asked for tea. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was a pause filled with purpose. After a few sips, he looked over at me and asked, "Kala, I know it hurts, but why now?"